People of early America were troubled with many problems. One of the problems that divided the country was slavery.
The whole southern part of America was built on slavery. Negro slaves were used to work on small farms and large plantations. However, in the North, many people were against slavery. They thought it was wrong for one man to own another, and they wanted the slaves to be set free.
When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go.
Indiana was a free state, and many Hoosiers looked upon slavery as an evil thing.
Many religious groups in Indiana, such as the Quakers, spoke out strongly against slavery.
Those who fought against slavery were called abolitionists, and they battled this institution in many ways. Certainly, one of the most dangerous and courageous ways was the Underground Railroad. Interesting enough, the Underground Railroad was not a real railroad at all. It was made up of people who secretly helped runaway slaves escape from the South by passing through the North to reach freedom in Canada. Years before Abraham Lincoln delivered his great Emancipation Proclamation speech that supposedly freed all slaves.
These brave freedom fighters, men and women, both black and white, were the true unsung heroes. For the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 made it against the law to help a runaway slave escape. It was also against the law to teach a slave to read and write. Think about it. If the world is an open book, educated slaves could read themselves to freedom.
Good news, the child's coming, good news. The child's coming, good news. The child's coming, and I don't want it to leave me behind. Good news, the child's coming, good news. The child's coming, good news. The child's coming, and I don't want it to leave me behind.
Here in Indiana, there were three major routes of the Underground Railroad: the Eastern Route, the Central Route, and the Western Route. All the routes eventually led to Canada.
The Eastern Route was a continuation from Cincinnati to Lawrenceburg, which split in Wayne County. Then a main line ran north through Winchester, Portland, Decatur, Fort Wayne, and Auburn into Michigan, and then up to Canada.
The Central Route originated from three branches which crossed the Ohio River at Madison, New Albany, and the vicinity of Leavenworth. These joined near Columbus and passed through Indianapolis, Westfield, Logansport, Plymouth, and South Bend, then to Michigan and Canada.
But the Western Route included our fair city of Terre Haute. This route crossed the Ohio at Evansville and followed the Wabash River through Princeton, Vincennes, and continued on to Terre Haute, Bloomingdale, and then Lafayette. From Lafayette, the route proceeded to Rensselaer, then South Bend, and up to Michigan, and then Canada. Altogether, it took over 650 difficult and dangerous miles to reach freedom.
It has been estimated that about 244 Hoosiers helped Negro fugitives escape. However, if each of these people sought the aid of only one other person per year, the number of Indiana residents who helped slaves to freedom must have been in the thousands. The Hoosier State was active in the Underground Railroad for about 35 years.
And Levi Coffin, who became known as the president of the Underground Railroad, was the leader for 20 of them. During that time, it is believed that he helped more than 2,000 slaves escape.
Other famed abolitionists outside of Indiana who worked hard to free slaves included Sojourner Truth,
Harriet Tubman,
and Frederick Douglass.
They all had one idea: to help runaway slaves get to free territory in Canada. They hid the slaves in their houses and on their farms. These hiding places were called stations. The men and women who led the slaves to freedom were called conductors. Soon, many whites and blacks were working together to help the slaves. Every person who kept a slave hidden until it was safe for the slave to leave was called an agent of freedom.
No man can hinder me. Ride on, King Jesus, ride on. No man can hinder me. No man can hinder me. Ride on, King Jesus. No man can hinder me. Ride on, King Jesus, ride on. No man can hinder me. No man can hinder me.
In Indiana, the Underground Railroad has stations in many important towns: Madison, Indianapolis, Richmond, Evansville, and even Terre Haute. In fact, Terre Haute played a major role in the flight of African American slaves to freedom.
About 5 miles from downtown Terre Haute, on the eastern edge of Vigo County, is Lost Creek Township. In this pre-Civil War farming community, blacks and whites lived and worked together. And yes, they were actively involved in the Underground Railroad movement.
After the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, there was no further use for the Underground Railroad, and it passed into the pages of history. However, it shouldn't come as a surprise that here in Terre Haute, there still remains one of the most important Underground Railroad stations.
Allen Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church, the oldest African American church in Vigo County and western Indiana, housed many runaway slaves.
The church was formed in 1837 by the Reverend William Paul Quinn and was originally located at 2nd and Sheets Streets, which is now Crawford Street.
Allen Chapel provided one of the first schools for African American children in the United States and produced the first African American high school graduate in Terre Haute. The church is also credited for producing the first African American graduate to become a teacher in Indiana.
The Reverend Hiram Revels, a pastor of Allen Chapel and a founder of its school, later became the first African American to serve as a United States Senator.
In 1868, Frederick Douglass, the leading spokesperson for African Americans in the 1800s, came twice to Terre Haute to raise money for the church.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Let's not forget that each time Underground Railroad conductors helped runaway slaves to escape. Their lives were in danger. Each time, agents answered the knock on the door in the middle of the night to feed or shelter runaway slaves. They knew they were facing possible fines and even imprisonment. These brave Indiana men and women of yesteryear were true unsung heroes.
Steal away to Jesus. Steal away home. I ain't got long to stay here. My Lord calls me. He calls me by the thunder. The trumpet sounds within my soul. I ain't got long to stay here.
Because most slaves could not read maps and road markings, the people who helped them to escape would give them signals to follow. For example, the slave may be told to find the Big Dipper in the constellation and then follow the North Star.
Once the slaves arrived at a home where they could hide, there would be other recognizable signals, such as a quilt with an embroidered Big Dipper with a North Star hanging from a window, hidden in plain view.
Look for these slaves when it is dark, and hang a quilt in plain view. They may be seeking your help.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home.
I looked over Jordan, and what did I see?
Coming forth to carry me home.
A band of angels coming after me.
Coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home.